Thanks once again for dropping by the channel. If you like the content, if you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe, share the video if you enjoyed it, if you felt it was useful. Now let's get into this. So still we're going with the hat. I'm actually liking it. For the videos anyway. I'm not wearing it throughout the day. Definitely not. But some people commented on it on the last video I did, and they said it was alright. They didn't mind it. I was over with my friend there the other night. We're at Monday night now, so I was over with my friend on Saturday night. So I met up with him for a bit, and I was saying to him that I was like, for fuck's sake, my hair is as long as anything. And he was even saying, look, it's not as bad as you make it out to be. And obviously I don't tell friends in my personal life that, I make YouTube videos and all like that. And I was like, well, I've been wearing the hat a lot. So, he kind of was like, why are you wearing a hat? And I was like, well, I'll tell you someday. But I'm still going to wear the hat for the YouTube videos anyway, just until I get it cut. You'll know when it's cut because you won't see me with it on anymore. But it's sticking for the foreseeable future, just because I hate my hair being long. As I said, I don't know how people do it who have long hair. And this thing, right, I'm doing a recording session, and what I do in these sessions is I do multiple videos. So this will be the first and last time that I will mention my hair and hat in any video. So the videos you see tomorrow and potentially the next day, because if I record in bulk, I upload them sporadically over a couple of days, so you won't hear me mention the hair. Okay, so yeah, we'll get into the topic. So I've been watching a lot of footage, as my phone beeps there, I've been watching a lot of footage of Chris Eubank Jr. working with Roy Jones. Now, I done a video, I might even have it on screen there. I done a video saying that I could see improvements in Chris Eubank Jr. from working with Roy Jones, and I maintain that I have seen slight improvements there on certain aspects of his game working with Roy Jones. Definitely, I like the fact that Roy Jones has Eubank Jr. exclusively using his left in certain spars. Now, I definitely like the fact that Eubank Jr. is acknowledging the fact that he's saying that he wished he'd worked with Roy Jones earlier. He's listening to Roy Jones, which I think is a good thing, because we've heard people like Adam Booth say is that Eubank Jr., and certainly when he was younger anyway, he just didn't listen. He didn't want to listen. He felt like he knew more. And you could say that Eubank Jr. in his older age has been humbled, because I say older age, he's only 30, but maybe he's kind of realizing that he needs to learn. He's had 2 losses. He's had some tough fights. And maybe he feels like, right, I need to finally learn and listen to a trainer. And I think with Roy Jones, one of the reasons why he probably listens to Roy Jones, respects Roy Jones, is because Roy Jones has accomplished so much in his career. Eubank Jr. maybe subconsciously would look at some of these trainers like Adam Booth, and we'd have his father in the background saying, oh, my son, he's this, that, and the other. And he's looking at his dad thinking, my dad's done more than these guys. I remember, I forget what fight it was. I think it might have been the Tom Doran fight. I think Conor Benn was on that card. And I know that Dave Colwell, I don't know if Dave Colwell was training Conor Benn, but I know Dave Colwell had a fighter on that card. And nothing to do with Eubank Jr., but you had Senior there, this is a couple of years ago now, taking the piss out of Dave Colwell, because in Dave Colwell's pro career, he only ever won an area title. Dave Colwell in his boxing career anyway, only ever won an area title. So when your dad's doing that to trainers and all that, it's probably making you look at those trainers and thinking, you didn't do much in your own boxing career, how can I take you serious? Whereas Roy Jones, he's done way more than Eubank Sr. has ever done. Roy Jones is an out-and-out Hall of Famer. He's an all-time great. So Eubank Jr., looking at Roy Jones, he's thinking, right, this is a guy who's done even more than my dad's done. So, I can listen to him. The more I've thought about Eubank Jr. and Roy Jones working together, though, it's made me ask a few questions to myself, because although I'm glad you're seeing certain positives, that Eubank Jr., he is taking heed of what Roy Jones is saying. He is showing a bit more initiative. He is listening to his trainer, which is something that he didn't do in the past. But Roy Jones Jr. in his prime was an athletic freak. People have long asked me, what was it about Roy Jones in his prime that makes you want to go back and watch him? It's the fact that you're watching a guy who, from a technical point of view, makes loads of mistakes. You know, Roy Jones was not, you know, a Bernard Hopkins or an Andre Ward in terms of his technique. You know, he wasn't going in there and being, you know, very, very finely technical, you know, being able to read this, being able to read that, being able to, you know, work fighters out, you know, on the fly. He wasn't doing that. He was just out athleticizing them, basically. He was so much faster than his opponent. He was so much quicker in terms of his reflexes and his speed that even if he was making mistakes, if he was off balance, he was out of distance anyway, before you could even do anything. So that was a lot of what made Roy Jones what Roy Jones was. And obviously, with age, those reflexes, that athleticism goes, and then you become slower. You lose that little bit of timing, which is the difference between getting caught with that Antonio Tarver left hand and not getting caught with that Antonio Tarver left hand, which is what happened in 2040. Roy Jones was like 36 at the time. Now, why I'm saying this is because Eubank Jr. is a fighter who we know hasn't shown great technical ability at all in his career, especially when he has to try and be the pressure fighter. He's trying to look for a fighter, like he did against George Groves. He swings, he looks very clumsy. You know, people said against James DeGale, he looked better in terms of being able to look for a fighter. I don't necessarily think that. You know, if you actually go back and watch that James DeGale fight, James DeGale was making it easy because he was throwing his jab and he was lunging in. You know, he was actually cutting the distance for Eubank Jr. himself, just because he was making more. He was making the mistakes, James DeGale. So it actually made Eubank Jr. look a little bit better in that fight than he actually was. You could see when James DeGale in that fight was boxing, that you knew if this was the James DeGale anywhere near his prime, he'd outbox Eubank Jr. quite easily. So Eubank Jr.'s problem has never been his athleticism. It's always been his technique. Now, as I said, Roy Jones in his prime was a fighter who didn't really use his technique. He made a lot of mistakes from a technical point of view in the ring. So you would imagine that he's probably getting Eubank Jr., I would just imagine, to use more of his athleticism as opposed to technique. That is not what Eubank Jr. needs, right? Eubank Jr. needs a trainer who's going to teach him the fine degree of technique, being able to use your jab, being able to get inside, being able to use your jabs to get inside, moving your head. If you were to ask me in the UK, who I would say, now this wouldn't work. This trainer I'm going to say, there'd be a massive clash if these two guys work together. But I think that if Eubank Jr. was to, in some magical universe, work with this trainer, I think he'd do wonders for Eubank Jr. And he gets a lot of stick, but I think Tunde Ajayi will be a good fit for Eubank Jr. because look at Anthony Yard, very good fundamentals. If you're looking in the States, Virgil Hunter, who I think Eubank Jr. did work with briefly. Never had a fight with him, but he did train with him briefly. And Ronnie Shields in Texas. Ronnie Shields is a very underrated coach. Roy Jones, I don't know if... We need to really see how Eubank Jr. looks with Roy Jones. But if Roy Jones is teaching his fighters what he was like in his prime, that's not what Eubank Jr. needs. You know, we don't need to see Eubank Jr. throwing these impressive combinations, you know, on the wall back. We need to see Eubank Jr. being able to fight on the back foot, use his jab, close down the distance, cut the ring off, use his jab to get inside. These are the things that Eubank Jr. has been lacking in his career, and at the highest level, they're the things he's going to need. So it'll be interesting to see when Boxer comes back. I think Eubank Jr. has admitted that he wouldn't mind fighting behind closed doors. It'll be interesting to see how he looks having worked with Roy Jones, to see if Roy Jones has made any improvements to Eubank Jr. from a serious technical point of view. You know, it's all well and good to look good, you know, in a couple of clips as Mike Tyson, but we need to see how he looks in a real fight. So those are my thoughts on this. Let me know what you think down below. Let me know if you think that Roy Jones and Chris Eubank Jr. is it a good fit? Do you think that just a few of the things I've raised in this video have made you think a little bit more about it, in a sense of Roy Jones being having a career that was defined by his athleticism as opposed to his technique, and Eubank Jr. likewise, you know, very good athleticism, very poor technique. You know, it's almost like two wrongs. It's like you've got a fighter who made a career out of his athleticism and a fighter who's making a career out of his athleticism but lacking the technique. Eubank Jr. is in his 30s. That athleticism is going to go. You need your technique. So let me know your thoughts down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, of course, if you are new. And as always, so before I go, I just want to say thank you for dropping by the channel. I really do appreciate it. I mean, all the support, all the things that have happened on this channel over the last year have been incredible. If you're new to the channel, as you'll see on screen there's a couple of like older videos that I have. Some of them aren't really relevant now, to be fair, but some of them are, like my Fighters with a Problem series, stuff like that. If you like any of this, please subscribe, like the video you just watched, share it, do it, all you gotta do. Let's try and keep this channel going, because I love doing this and I love interacting with the fans, and I love hopefully the fans love watching my videos. So thank you for dropping by. I've been G-Man. I will talk to you.